Awesome. Welcome, everybody. We're so happy you're joining us today. Welcome, welcome. Hi, everybody. As you're entering, please feel free to enter your name and your organization in the chat so we can see who's with us. Good morning. Hi, Katie. So glad you're here. Thanks for joining us today. Good morning, Aaron. Hi, Raul. Everybody put your name and your organization in the chat, please. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Oh, great. Hi, Nicole. Hey, Sandy. So glad you're with us. Hello, hello. Again, we'll get started in just in a couple moments. Want to give space time for everybody to join on. Hi, Jacqueline. Good morning, everybody. Thank you again so much for joining us today as we uplift leaders and solutions, as Los Angeles recovers and rebuilds. We have some amazing speakers here today that I know you're going to love to hear from. I'm Samantha Sandoval. I'm with the Latino Community Foundation. I lead grant making for the foundation. I also lead the California Wildfire and Disaster Relief Fund that we've had, and we've responded to multiple wildfires over the years since 2017. In total, we've given out about $9.8 million altogether for various disasters. And currently, we're focused on the Los Angeles recovery. So excited to have you. This is our second webinar in our series. And first off, we're actually going to ensure that there's language justice, right? We want to ensure there's interpreted into Spanish for those who need who need that. And so I'm going to pass it over to Carmen. She's with Linguistica Interpreting and Translation, and she'll provide more information about how to access interpreting.
Good morning. Access to the interpretation channel will be given in English and in Spanish. If you're using a laptop to access the
Great. Carmen, I think we lost you. Good morning, Lily. We're glad you're here. Carmen, we'd love to hear your instructions, please. Okay. I know we're also going to put some instructions in the chat as well. So once we get those, you could be able to access the channel. Great. Okay, well, we're getting that figured out. I'm actually just going to turn it over to our CEO, Julián Castro. He's been leading us for the past couple years now, and he's going to actually facilitate today's conversation and introduce today's amazing speakers. So I'll turn it over to Julián.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks a lot, Samantha. And let me just start by saying a huge thank you to you, not just for today, but for just the excellent work that you've done in partnership with the panelists that we're going to meet today and so many other partners as Los Angeles recovers and rebuilds from the wildfires that struck in January of 2025. Immediately after the wildfires struck Los Angeles in the Eaton fire, the Altadena fire, the Palisades fire, the Latino Community Foundation stood up a California Wildfire Fund to help ensure that organizations serving the most vulnerable individuals and families in the Los Angeles area. People who were both homeowners and renters, uh, people who are outdoor workers, folks who are working as nannies, gardeners, just people who often live at the edge under normal circumstances, but often also have the hardest time having their needs met after a disaster happens. We stood up a fund specifically to be able to provide resources to organizations rooted in community who are working with them. We wanted to serve the most vulnerable and also do so in a way that reached Latinas and Latinos and also was in coalition to model the multiracial democracy that we'd like to help build. A few days ago, I was in Altadena at an event to mark the 1 year anniversary of the fires. And what I heard in testimony from uh, individuals and families that had had their homes burned down was that so many of the needs that existed on day one still exist. And that this recovery and rebuild is a long-term effort that requires the sustained investment and the sustained commitment from the organizations that we're going to highlight, from so many other organizations, and also from the public sector and the private sector. Today, we have an opportunity to listen to leaders of 4 different organizations that have been doing a tremendous job trying to meet the needs of families in Los Angeles affected by the wildfires. They've been doing it in different communities in different ways, but all with a tremendous commitment to equity and to justice. Let me just say one quick word about our philosophy at the Latino Community Foundation when it comes to disaster recovery. Like you, we understand that it is long term and that also there are different phases to this, that there are immediate needs of money for rent, money for food, money for other necessities, and help connecting with government agencies that can provide assistance. There are also needs that come after that of rebuilding and the recovery process. And there's also the longer term need that's just as significant for families of systems change, of trying to make sure that as we recover and rebuild, that we listen to the needs of the most vulnerable and that we change systems to reflect their needs too, so that God forbid, if something like this ever happens again, we don't have the same challenges in meeting their needs. What I heard last week in Altadena were stories of continued frustration with insurance companies, with government regulations, with other things and systems that often get in the way of making families whole. The organizations that we have the privilege of working with are endeavoring every day to change that. And the leaders that you're going to hear from certainly play a role in that, in the immediate relief, the intermediate, and the long-term systems change. And it's one of the reasons that we're so proud to call them our partners. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce them, and then we'll have a conversation. And I think that you're going to get a lot out of it. Our first panelist is Vanessa Aramayo, who is the CEO of Alliance for a Better Community. Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us. Our next panelist is Enji Chung, co-founder and organizer of the Fire Poppy Project. Enji, thank you for being a part of this as well. Our next panelist is Heavenly Hughes, who's the founder and executive director of My Tribe Rise. Heavenly, thank you for being with us. And our final panelist is Mayra Macedo-Nolan, who's the executive director of Clergy Community Coalition. Pastor, thank you so much for joining us and being part of this panel. And Vanessa, I wanted to start off with you. ABC, not too long ago, I attended an anniversary celebration for for Alliance for a Better Community, ABC is no stranger to doing grassroots community work in the Los Angeles area. I wanted to just start off by asking why it was so important for ABC in its recovery response uh, to center undocumented and mixed status families while also supporting, generally Latino grassroots organizations in your work.
Absolutely. Thank you. And first, my thanks to you, Julián, to the LCF team for putting this really important conversation together and for the invitation to be part of it. As you mentioned, we have displaced workers that have been living on the edge and continue to even before the fires. We knew that our undocumented and mixed status families who hold so much of the economy, who are such a part of the Los Angeles fabric, who help on the day-to-day daily lives, helping families in different industries, stocking our supermarkets with food. We know that they were going to be among the first impacted in the first line and without any means to access for traditional resources, despite the fact that they were among the most impacted during these crises. We knew that impacted members from our community were also going to be scattered throughout. These were people that were working in the Altadena, Pasadena, Malibu, Palisades area, but lived as far north as the Antelope Valley. They lived in the San Fernando Valley in Southeast LA, East LA, South LA. And there were not going to be concentrated efforts in each of their local communities to provide assistance. We also knew, and very much in alignment with the name of today's conversation, Nuestro Camino, Adelante, we know because our team, as is the same for many organizations working in the field, have personal experiences of what the challenges were going to be. Fear of being on federal registrations, on radars, fear of having somebody come and knock on the door, of sharing their addresses and their personal information. There are gaps that have existed long before the wildfires that were only exacerbated with the wildfires, and we knew that we would be able, with the partnership of our partner organizations, to reach these communities and to be able to get much needed resources into their hands quickly. The Fuerza Fund that was established days after the fire started was already part of a long-term strategy that we were looking at would address chronic underfunding and systemic neglect of Latino communities. We were able to quickly activate it when the wildfires began in order to meet this urgent need. And we were able to center undocumented families because we knew that there was going to be isolation, challenges to access of these resources. And we knew that because as you said earlier, they've been living on the edge for so long, and they were among the most vulnerable. So through this fund, and thanks to critical supporters like the Latino Community Foundation, we were able to provide very immediate assistance in response immediately after the fires. And we were also able to implement a recovery phase where we identified among the highest needs in families. These were families that had multi-generational members in their homes, that had children in their homes, that did not have stable housing yet, and provide them also with monthly assistance. So we had one-time payments, and then we also had monthly assistance. And we also knew that these were families that were not going to be eligible for other types of public assistance. So they're completely reliant on the work. And if you can imagine from one day to the next, thousands of people being without work, frontline essential workers, this was a critical gap that needed to be filled. And so we were very proud and happy that we were able to get the support that we did, and that the Fuerza Fund was able to provide this flexible support at a moment where very few options existed. The urgency intensified, as you know, as violent and very harmful ICE enforcement had escalated shortly after the fund's launch. And this just compounded trauma and instability, as we've seen, with families that were already navigating displacement and loss, having more instability. and fear in their homes. So today we're continuing to provide assistance. We really understand that too many people, as you mentioned, remain without stable housing or consistent employment, and they're really forced to make impossible choices on a day-to-day. I mean, to not have to look at our phones and see where there might be a threat and make a decision on whether we're going to go to work or take our kids to school is a luxury in our communities right now. And so the flexibility of the Forza Fund to put some cash assistance into direct hands, and now also looking at how we are supporting Latino-led organizations that are doing this very difficult work and are not finding enough support is really important.
And just briefly, Vanessa, and tell us about the Fuerza Fund. Y'all, where is it now? Uh, you know, uh, to what extent have y'all been able to get those dollars out to the organizations and meet those needs?
Right, absolutely. So we have dozens of organizations across LA County that we have partnered with in different types of work for education advocacy, on health advocacy, economic opportunities, and expanding that, and then on civic engagement, civic participation, and voter outreach. And so through our different networks, we have been able across the region of Los Angeles County, been able to look at who is on the ground already providing resources, how are we coordinating. We know that one-time $500 payments or a one-time $1,000 payment to a family is just sometimes, it is not enough. And we also know that families can, where they're not eligible for traditional assistance, can be eligible through multiple organizations. And so working closely with these organizations and coordinating how we deliver that support has been just such a gift in order to be able to maximize the support. Meaning if there's support for youth and some of our partners provide that support to that targeted population, they're also recommended possibly that the family could be eligible for support, the parents could be eligible for support from us. And so being able to maximize that has been really important. And I think that's one of the unique things about the Forza Fund is we are looking at how we are coordinating the delivery of services. We are looking to secure funding to also give subgrants to our partner organizations who have a more direct contact with the people that need the support. And we're also looking at how those organizations, because we've heard of millions of dollars that have been donated, to provide the assistance to people. And what a lot of times the media and the stories don't catch is the dollars come in and the dollars go out, because the dollars are meant to go into people's hands, and rightfully so. But how do you support the infrastructure and the staffing that it takes to be able to get the dollars out, to ensure that we're doing it in a way that where we're stewarding the dollars properly and we're getting it to the right people's hands? Those dollars are not always, that funding is not really available. And so identifying that these organizations, it's, it could be 500,000, $1 million in, but it's 500,000, $1 million out. And there's a percentage that takes in order to be able to do it. And so the Forza Fund has been able to do subgrants to organizations, unrestricted, what we call unrestricted funding, which means there are no ties to it. You use it in the best way that you need to support your organization and the sustainability of the work that you're doing, as well as being able to provide the direct cash assistance. But we are pivoting to be able to support those frontline organizations, because we know that that's what's really helping to protect our local communities and to help uplift them out of these very tenuous and turbulent times.
Well, thank you for that. Enji, I want to ask you, how has the Fire Poppy project that you lead, how has it helped address the unique challenges faced by tenants and renters since the wildfires? We know that so many people were affected by these wildfires, and a lot of the attention, in some ways, understandably, at the beginning focuses on the homeowners who may have lost their home or had them damaged. But the renters, the tenants, they're also tremendously affected. Could you talk to us about that?
Thank you, Julián and Samantha. And it's good to see a lot of dear ones on this panel. I know we've been all journeying on the ground since January 7th. Fire Poppy Project started as a mutual aid organization. I was an impacted renter that was not insured. And I lived in the city of Pasadena, former resident of Altadena, and I saw how in Pasadena the laws were not in favor of renters and tenants, and the laws were not in favor of Altadena renters and tenants, whether their structure burned or whether their structure was standing. We saw landlords hike up rental prices in the midst of this fire. Not, it was still January. We saw landlords evict people. We saw landlords deny their renters some level of protection and safety around not even providing PPE, but not remediating the structures of their units, saying that it wasn't their responsibility. And a lot of people were pushed out. We're 1 year out, and it's not just renters. We know it's also homeowners who had standing structures. But a lot of what we did in the early days was similar to what Vanessa and her community had to do, what Heavenly had to do, what Pastor Mayra had to do, which was gather PPE, gather industrial equipment, partner with smoke remediation companies to tell people, because they were doing it themselves, honestly, in the early days. But we knew there were elders and people with disability who we knew who could not remediate their structure in their homes. And so we partnered early with Enji and the Job Center, the Pasadena Job Center, and the day laborers to create an operation to support some of our most vulnerable community members that initially were renters, but then turned into also underinsured or non-insured homeowners. And what began as a partnership with many community members and many organizations, we began to one by one address some of the challenges that were impacted, particularly with renters. We helped, especially the Mirador senior complex, form their own tenants association. We felt that strategy that Pasadena Tenants Union and Altadena Tenants Union promoted around creating your own tenants association to come together as a community, to join with other organizations and to uplift what was going wrong, how people were abandoned the night of the fires, how their units were not remediated and decontaminated. For those who are joining us who don't know, there are a lot of toxins and dangerous levels of lead, arsenic, asbestos, and other heavy metals that remained after the fires in a lot of the standing structures and in the soil. And so Fire Poppy Project, along with the other organization, Dina Soil Project, is working hard to provide free smoke remediation to community and soil remediation. And so one of the things that we're doing right now, we've already remediated about 250 homes in the region. We're continuing to raise funds. We continue to have applicants because even those with insurance are now hearing from their insurance companies to remediate their homes after over a year, which means some people made the decision to go back in harmful settings. And so we're really advocating for more testing and equitable testing for everybody, to have testing available, not just only for the soil, but for the homes, for before remediation and after remediation. And in addition to just the basic needs around food, rental costs, supporting people with eviction, people who are not able to get housing right now, we're having to defend our community members around the ICE raids and the kidnappings and the assaults happening in our streets on a daily basis. So we, along with everybody here and everybody who are on the ground, there's no rebuild without a just and equitable recovery. And we firmly believe, we know that many renters were pushed out. We know that developers are coming in, and we continue to fight to have all of our beloveds come back to this community, whether they're renters or homeowners.
Thank you so much for that, Enji. And Heavenly, I wondered if you could to reflect on this past year of recovery in the Altadena community, and talk to us about the ways that My Tribe Rise has supported those families that are recovering.
Yes. Hi, thank you so much for having me here with you all today. I want to say thank you to Julián and also Samantha, the Latino Community Foundation, for stepping right in and supporting our community, the most vulnerable of our community. As you know, it has been an immense challenge to navigate after the fire. We immediately did our rapid response through opening up our We Will Rise Resource Center, also having our power luncheons so that we can have agency available for our seniors, our renters, those who were needing support to access resources. And so I will say one of the challenges that we immediately addressed was for our seniors. We noticed that our seniors were not able to access the resources for recovery, especially early on. You know, we had to go online. Most applications were online. A lot of our seniors, when we're talking about 65 and up, all the way up to 90 years old, they were not able to access these agencies. And so through our power luncheons, which we have had throughout this entire year of 2025, was a tool and a vessel to bring our community together, our Altadenians together, not only to receive agency regarding the recovery, but also to see their neighbors, also to be cared on. We really focus on one-on-one care. Because this has been a very heavy recovery. And as we evolve and understand the different layers of unmet needs that our community members are experiencing, of course, we pivot and adjust accordingly to what's being shared to us. And it's so great to be in community with each and every one of you. I see, of course, Enji, Vanessa, Pastor Mayra. These are community members that we are all on the ground daily, day in and day out, serving our community. I'm really glad that you brought up the point about our laborers, those who are like our caretakers, our painters, the workers at our homes, even before the fire. A lot of those were directly impacted as well, even if they didn't live in Altadena. And so support like that was provided through LCF helped us to provide wages and funds to those who were directly impacted because they lost their income. A lot of the caregivers that were in Altadena also lost their income. I'm so thankful that Enji brought up about the remediation. It has been a hardship on our community to be able to get those services. I'm also thankful for the partners who have also guided us and taught us how to make sure we are caring and loving for our neighbors, our brown neighbors, our Latino neighbors. Sometimes people need to be shown how to care. And so, and also understand what culturally sensitive really means after a disaster like this. And so I feel like LCF stepped right up and understood that this is a unique community, and how funding is dispersed matters in our community. And so we truly appreciate you all coming and sitting down with us to understand how to serve us, how to help us, how to bridge those gaps. And we truly appreciate that. So yeah, we continue to have our We Will Rise Power luncheons and resource hub. We also have our Adopter Survivor program, because what we understand is the biggest need is funding. Many of our survivors are experiencing paying mortgages on a land that they cannot live on. They're also paying rent, and I mean extremely high rents that most of our community members were not even accustomed to paying. Most, like with our family, we purchased our home back in the 70s. So which is the same for many of our neighbors in Altadena. So when they're having to pay these mortgages and then go out to look for housing and the prices are gouged, such as like 3,500 to 6,500 for a 2-bedroom home or a 3-bedroom home. We needed to have subsidies to help our people hold on and have housing, a place to rest their head while they're trying to navigate, again, the layers of unmet needs and understanding how to move forward to do our rebuild and restore our community. I'll say that recently what we have seen as a major problem is with the insurance companies. Many of our neighbors in Altadena, some had paid for their homes, so they may not have had insurance. Also, we noticed that many of our neighbors had been dropped just months before the fire. The insurance companies had dropped them. And then there's neighbors who have been paying insurance for decades, and now they're making claims. And just this week, we received 3 more calls of insurance companies saying that they're going to drop survivors due to the fact that they made a claim. And to me, this is another catastrophe. I feel like we all have now experienced what it means to first be burnt out of our community, and then all the catastrophes and disasters that continue to happen after the fire. So we want to say that we truly appreciate your support in addressing the unmet needs in our community. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Heavenly, for those remarks and for the very impressive work that you and the organization have been doing. Pastor Mayra, thank you for joining us. I wondered if you could talk to us about why it was so important for local clergy and faith leaders to come together and to play a leadership role in this recovery and rebuild. And tell us a little bit, if you could, about what CCC has accomplished for the community over this past year.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us be a part of this webinar. And thank you also to LCF for showing up, as Heavenly says, showing up for our community. It really makes a difference. It really means so much when y'all come visit us. When you come and walk our blocks and show up to meetings and come to celebrations with us, it has been everything to us and has kept us encouraged. So thank you. Yeah, a year ago, we were just so unprepared, so when the fires tore through, we understood something clearly, that the disaster and the fires, they don't just burn structures, they fracture trust, they displace memory, and they shake the spiritual ground that people are actually standing on. And then we also understood that the fires didn't impact everyone equally, right? As you've heard, and that recovery wouldn't either unless it was intentionally shaped by just practices. And so the clergy and local faith leaders are often the first responders after the first responders leave. They're trusted people. They're the ones that are sitting with families at kitchen tables when the insurance adjusters don't show up. They're the ones that are opening up their sanctuaries when the homes are lost. The particular church that I happen to be sitting in right now, there was like 47 people and 13 pets, in here, those days afterwards, like literally there was a gym full of dogs, and that's what faith communities have done. And they're the ones that are translating systems that just really feel so overwhelming for people. They're not the only ones, but they are because they're trusted. And they're holding the grief that really just has nowhere else to go. So they're not outside of recovery. Faith leaders are just intimately embedded within the recovery. And they're trusted anchors in the Black community, in the Brown community, in the immigrant and working class community, amongst elderly communities that are often the last to receive the aid. And the first to who were displaced. I mean, we were all there, right? We were in the convention center, and we were just devastated by how many elderly people, our elderly neighbors, were laying in cots. It was horrible. And so these are the folks that we are centering. And I look at Heavenly and Enji because I know you, and I don't know our other partner on the webinar, but I'm sure. I mean, we're talking about the same thing, right? These are the folks that we're making sure that are at the center of the concern of everyone's concern. And so we've learned a lot, and we're learning that also in disasters, the systems tend to move the fastest for those who already have access, for those who have documentation, for those who have insurance, and for those who have political visibility. And so the Black, Brown, immigrant, and low income and elderly, they're the renters, they're often left navigating things that are harder for them and often with not enough guidance. And so that's why organizing local clergy mattered. Faith leaders they're uniquely positioned at the fault lines of inequality. They're trusted, like I said, and I'll keep saying it because it really, really matters. Um, and organizing the clergy, it wasn't about symbolism, although that really matters when people see clergy out there helping, but it was about shifting the power towards those who are closest to the harm by their shepherds, the people who walk with them all the time. So we were able to do several different things, but we kind of focused on a few areas. We wanted very much to stay in our lane. So we wanted to make sure that we were looking at coordination and protection. So faith leaders, they needed timely information. They needed to come together across denominations and traditions to be coordinated in their work, because we couldn't all be doing the same 10 things, right? So we needed to bring some kind of glue to the table to make sure that we were working together. And then this allowed churches and faith spaces, especially those who are partnering with others. Like, for instance, my tribe Rise was at Morning Star Baptist, but it really provided them the ability to become these hubs of accurate information, of mutual aid distribution, and accompaniment, which we know is really critical, especially for families, mixed status families, and those who are afraid of engaging in formal systems, right? So, and then the next area was capacity and care. Many leaders themselves are fire survivors. We lost 11 houses of worship. Over a dozen clergy in this community lost their homes. So the CCC invested in leader care, in trauma-informed support, and in practical tools, so that clergy as well as other community leaders could continue serving without burning out or breaking down. Not that that hasn't happened, but we wanted to try to do whatever we could to support that, because the recovery is not sustainable if the leaders and the caregivers collapse. And then finally, advocacy. We just wanted to make sure that the voices of impacted communities were at the table for these conversations about policy, for conversations around insurance barriers, housing displacement, environmental health, and the compounded harm facing the migrant families. And we wanted to make sure that recovery conversations didn't erase the most vulnerable. And oftentimes the faith leaders they're walking with these people and they are fierce advocates for them. And beyond these three, these were really the main thing, but we were able to, through partnerships like LCF and others, create infrastructure, and we launched RISE grants where through CCC direct funds that we were able to have access to, and our partners together distributed about 1.7 million, primarily through faith communities and other nonprofit organizations. And it was really to create sustainability amongst the clergy and faith leaders to help to support the vital program that they were carrying out, and then to work with the people that they were working with, because the last thing that we need to be doing as a convener and network is moving directly with people when they already have relationship with others. So we wanted to help the pastor or the leader like Heavenly or someone else make sure that they were the ones who are going to be walking with people, and the support came through them because they have a relationship with them. So it's been a lot. We've learned this: when faith and community leaders are resourced and organized and protected, the entire neighborhood stabilizes faster. And we're just grateful we were able to do this through the support from LCF and others who recognize the critical role that clergy and community leaders play. And we were able to step into this really unique space that we never thought that we would be in, and we never thought that we'd have the opportunity to work this way. And we're hoping and searching and praying that these resources continue to become to be available, because our recovery, we're just at the beginning. The load that these leaders are carrying is about to get heavier. We know that it's happening right now, and they're worthy. They're so worthy of the support from this community, from business, from philanthropy, to make sure that they can continue to care for our impacted residents.
Well, thank you, Pastor Mayra, for sharing insight into CCC's work and the work and the impact of the faith community. For my next set of questions, really it's a similar question to each of you. But I wondered, just beginning with Vanessa, if you could reflect on, how philanthropy and those, in a spirit of generosity and of helping to make change, including systemic change, what role do you think that philanthropy should be playing to ensure a just recovery, and how can they be supportive of ABC's efforts to do that?
Absolutely. I mean, I echo what has been said, and I would say the key role is to release the investments faster and to trust the people that are doing it, the people that found this webinar and who they represent and the partners that they work with. This moment calls for greater trust. It calls for community-led solutions that don't just respond to crisis, but also shift power and build long-term resilience. So there's a saying in Spanish, no hay mal que por bien no venga. And if I try to translate it, Pastor Mayra, correct me, but there's nothing wrong in something bad happening as long as something good can come of it, right? And I'm sure there's like an English mirrored one, I just don't know what it is. But if this moment can help us transform and can help us fill those historic gaps, then it won't have been in vain, and it will have yielded a result that our communities really deserve. When we think about bold solutions, a lot of people say that. Well, what does that mean? It means trusting that community-based organizations know what they do, know what they're doing, and they know what works. It means not asking already stretched organizations to do more work, just fund the existing work, less reporting, less paperwork. It means trusting that flexible and unrestricted funding will lead to better outcomes. It means that trusting that the people that are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution. So, as a Latino advocacy organization that looks at how we build that systemic change, that make that lasting positive impact, and are also meeting the moment, we know that these organizations that are led by people of color need the resources to maintain their operations, to retain staff. You heard earlier, it's going to get worse, and it is. Why? Because there are more funding cuts, there are more hostilities in just the landscapes. Read the headlines. And we need to make sure that we're not just holding on to the talent, to the institutional knowledge, but that we are also taking care of our people, of the people that work at our organizations, that they are not just, that they're able to thrive and not, just barely making it and surviving. We need to be able to compensate and create the packages that help uplift our staff. We also need to look at how we can scale programs, and that's really hard in this moment. But the need will increase, and our response has to be able to increase in order to meet the real needs, not just basic, but long-term needs of our communities. And we know that we can't do this without one or the other. It's stability and impact, and knowing that that goes hand in hand. Then for everyday people, philanthropy for sure. We also know it means that for everyday people, we can do something. We can get involved. We can volunteer for these organizations. We can volunteer our skills, our time. In some instances, some people can continue to give, making sure that you're supporting local businesses, that you're supporting local organizations that are having that impact, and maximizing, the trusted messenger component. What Pastor Mayra was saying about places of worship and faith spaces is absolutely true. We know that we can reach our communities through trusted messengers, particularly schools, churches, places of worship, clinics, local centers, and we need to be able to support those. And I think that our everyday people can do it more easily now than before. It's resharing a post, it's making those donations, it's attending the community meeting, and then it's also getting out and participating in our elections. We have a lot of people that are not participating as much. There's a lot happening, and we know by the data that those regions that are civic deserts that don't have the same participation are also regions that have higher food insecurity, higher housing insecurity. So as organizations, we also have to look at how we're reaching our members, our clients, and encouraging them to vote and giving them the information on, the dates and so on to vote, important election dates. And so there's a lot that can be done, and philanthropy is core because philanthropy is at the center of being able to provide the resources for us to have greater outreach and for us to really activate communities and raise more education on opportunities.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And Enji, same question. How do we advance a just and equitable recovery, and how can philanthropy support the fire poppy projects work to do it?
Thank you, Julián. Vanessa, I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, right? We're all shaking our heads like exclamation point, mic drop, emphasis on everything you said, wholeheartedly. And so I'll just touch on a couple more points around focusing on the environmental impact and the economy. I really firmly believe in an economy that includes some of the most hardworking second responders who have been harassed and under attack right now, who have been removing debris, who have been cleaning homes, who were the former landscapers, who've been clearing all the toxins through smoke remediation operation, and many others who are providing food in this community. I believe that this rebuild must include an economy of care, an economy of love that includes making sure that they're a part of that rebuild, and a part of that rebuild that includes their personal safety and the removal of violence that we are seeing all across the country. I do think there's an opportunity to have a community testing lab here. I know that there are universities, but I believe we can create a community testing lab here, at least with soil. Testing equipment for soil, it runs at $35,000. We can create these opportunities and have our community members be able to do this, to run these operations. While a lot of things are cost prohibitive, with soil remediation, there are opportunities for us to bring those resources into community and have that be a part of this community. I don't want to take up too much time because I know Heavenly, you will have something amazing to say, and Pastor Mayra, but really from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much, Samantha and Julián and the Latino Community Foundation, for really swooping in the early days, because it was critical. It was critical. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Enji. And Heavenly,
Yes.
you're also there right in the middle of this rebuild and recovery in Altadena. How do we ensure that it is equitable? And what role does philanthropy have to play in supporting My Tribe Rise's efforts?
Definitely. Thank you so much. I want to echo even what Enji said. Vanessa, Mic drop. I also appreciate everything that Pastor Mayra, again, these are team members that we've been working with for years. And that's what really also makes a difference. My Tribe Brides has been serving this community since 2019. And I believe and feel like the day when Samantha and her team came and sat with us, I believe Pastor Mayra mentioned that. That's the way philanthropy definitely should distribute their care with their fundings, by sitting and finding out, be intentional to find out who are the community members who have been in the trenches, who have been on the ground, boots on the ground from day one. Even our organization, My Tribe Rise, we have been a volunteer-based organization since 2019. It wasn't until this year when funders like yourselves and others who made it possible for us to hire survivors, also able to hire employees. That is how you help build the infrastructure for organizations like ours. We may not have that strong social media presence, yet our presence in the community is vital and has been very impactful. I see that with all the neighbors that I see on this call. So I want to say thank you for how you all approached our community. I also have to give a shout out to Dina Hills, because they also were an example of how we assure equity. They called My Tribe Brides and said, Samantha is here looking for organizations that are boots on the ground serving. And that's how we also make sure, as community members, as community leaders and organizations, we need to share the resources with one another, be open to share. I always believe that when you give, you receive. Is better to give. And so I appreciate, I got to give a shout out to Corolla. She said, Heavenly, Samantha is ready to meet with you. And I feel like that's a way where we community build. That is a way we build within the different organizations, because we're all offering different services. Yet we're all serving a lot of the same community members, offering different unmet needs to be addressed. So yes, take time to intentionally find out what organizations are the organizations who have been in the community. I will say we have our Adopt a Survivor program. That is our biggest program at this time. It's our bridge financing program that is helping to give grants from $5,000 to $50,000 to help hold our community during the interim of this litigation against Southern California Edison. We don't want to be forced out because our community members can't hold on because they've lost everything. And I think Enji and I have had this conversation. I think Endelon was in this conversation. Shout out to Endelon for their great services. Where people are now paying $10,000 a month just to function, just to have a roof over their head and hold on to their land. We have to bring support in the interim during this fight for our lives, fight for our generational wealth, fight for our community. And so we do also have the campaign out there, Altadena is not for sale. And sometimes people don't always understand exactly what that means. For us, it means that we want our survivors, our community, to know you have someone here for you. You have organizations like you see here today who are providing services, education, and a hand to help you hold on if you do not want to sell, if you do want to rebuild. We understand that there are some that may need to sell. We also are there for you in that instance. If you need to sell, let's sell within our community. We want to be the one to invite the new residents that are coming into the new Altadena. We want to be a part of those conversations of who is coming to Altadena. At one point, Altadena had the second largest Black home ownership in the nation. We want to build that back up. We want to have the resources and funding and reach to other homeowners, Black homeowners, or people who want to become homeowners within Altadena. We want to invite them, and we want to be intentional on who we're inviting to Altadena.
Thank you, Heavenly, for that and for the work that y'all continue to do. Pastor Mayra, if you could round us out here on the advancing an equitable and just recovery and the role of philanthropy.
Yeah, I won't repeat all the amazing things that my friends said um, on this webinar. They are absolutely right um, about talking about infrastructure, talking about just all of the things that they said. I was like, yes, right on. I like cross all that off that I was going to say. But this is the magic right here. This is the blessing, however you want to frame it, is these people. These people are the relentless, fearless fighters, protectors of their community. These are the ones who are going to make sure that this recovery is just, make sure that we're asking the right questions, not just how do we build back, but who actually gets to return, who actually gets to stay, who gets protected when systems fail. That's these people right here. And so for the CCC, like our role is supporting them, making sure that they're okay, making sure that they're drinking water, taking breaks, taking a weekend away, checking in on people's well-being, making sure that the faith communities in particular have the information they need. But this is it right here. I think a year later, at the beginning of this long road that we have ahead of us, we're not only rebuilding what burned, but we're rebuilding how we belong to one another. When the world is falling apart, when everything is being fragmented, we have to do this. We have to interlace, lock arms, and be for one another and for one another's success, because one another's success means our people get to come back. Our people get to rebuild. We can go beyond 20% Black home ownership in Altadena. We can get it back to old numbers that nobody has heard about in a long time. We can do that. But all of the things they said, trusting us, trusting the leaders, and continuing to invest in what we know our community needs is what we invite philanthropy to join with us and with this slow, sacred, and very necessary work of partnership.
Julián, can I say one quick thing that's 20 seconds long? I know we're at time.
Go ahead.
It's just what the pastor was saying in Heavenly, we're also saying, reminds me for philanthropic organizations in this moment where there's a fear of funding Black and Latino-led initiatives because of what attorneys are advising and so on. My advice, unsolicited advice, is maybe look at getting new attorneys, because this moment will be judged by history, and we need to make sure that philanthropy continues to be there. So thank you to Latino Community Foundation, because you have shown the courage that we need to see across all philanthropic organizations.
No, thank you for that, Vanessa. And thank each and every one of you for sharing your insights today, for the excellence, the passion, the commitment that you bring and your organizations bring every single day to the Los Angeles community, and especially as they recover from the wildfires. And just want to say that during the course of this hour, we've heard, I think, certain common themes, that we need to trust in community, that we need to engage in trust-based philanthropy, that we need to give as much latitude as possible to organizations that are on the ground, that we need to be willing to sit with them and to listen and to learn in philanthropy. And most especially that all of us need to make a long-term commitment to have their back, because they have the community's back as they try and not just recover and rebuild and get their homes and their lives back, but to change systems for the long term, so that they don't face the same inequities and injustices, but that we can create a stronger Los Angeles and communities everywhere through what's happening here and create a new model. Thank you for being a part of this. I hope that folks will follow the work of each of these leaders and organizations and the work of the Latino Community Foundation. Take care.
Thank you very much. Peace and blessings.
Thank you.